So my first, we could not have a picture. I was on the expression picking up my house and it was for a long time. Because we went to Chicago to see it.
Okay, it is 6 p.m. We will call the August 20th, 2024 regular meeting of the Township Board of the Charter Township of Meridian to order. First on our agenda is the Pledge of Allegiance. Would those who are able please stand and join us in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Item number 3 on our agenda is a roll call. In the absence of Clerk Guthrie, would Deputy Clerk Emily Gordon please call the roll?
Supervisor Hendrickson?
Here.
Treasurer DeShane?
Here.
Trustee McCurtis?
Here.
Trustee Sunland?
Here.
Trustee Trezise?
Here.
Trustee Wilson?
Here.
Clerk Guthrie? 6 board members present, Clerk Guthrie absent.
Thank you, Deputy Clerk Gordon. Next on our agenda is item 4A, a presentation from Granger Services for Governmental and Regulatory Affairs Manager Charles Hauser and Director of Sales and Market Development Scott Truman. If you would please come to the podium.
It's going to take a second just to hook this up. Here we go. All right. Wonderful. Let's see. Okay. All right. Hello, everyone. Thank you for the introduction. My name is Charles Hauser. I am the Governmental and Regulatory Affairs Manager for Granger Waste Services. I'm here today with Scott Truman, who is our Sales and Market Development Director at the company as well. We were asked to come today and present and talk a little bit about the services that we do provide within Meridian Township and kind of give an overview. There are some new faces, and just want to make sure that we have an understanding of what we do within this great community. So just a little introduction in the front here. So it's providing prime service for a prime community. I know Meridian really focuses on that, being very important to the residents as well as the folks in this room today. So we really appreciate the opportunity and enjoy providing service and helping to keep this community clean. So a little bit about what we'll go over today is who we are, services we provide, environmental stewardship, and community involvement as well. A little quick overview of who we are. We are the local solid waste and recycling company in this region since 1966. So the Granger family, who's now in their 4th generation, the CEO and CFO are the 3rd generation, Todd and Keith Granger. And we have the next generation is coming up through director, managerial, and supervisory roles as well. But including the family and over our 360 associates, we proudly provide services to these communities that we actually live in. So, you know, that really, we want to make sure that we do a good job and we provide great service because, again, when we go home, it's in this same area. We are, as a company, guided by the golden rule, and we also make it a focus to be environmental stewards. So I'm going to pass this on to Scott, talk a little bit about our services that we provide within the community.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for having us here tonight. I really want to start off a little bit just how we work within all of our communities and how we communicate. We have a call center that's open Monday through Friday from 8 till 5. Website, email, chat, everything that's available from that. We, of course, do all different variety of social media. We like to work with other municipalities for communication, such as how we've done in Meridian Township. Like to continue doing that. Our website, which is quite robust, always in a world where we're trying to make it better. There is a page on the website that's dedicated to Meridian Township, and it just helps with some information about types of material that you're going to recycle. So kind of recycling do's and don'ts, if you will. Within the township itself, we provide 3 different types of trash service. We provide a 96-gallon cart, a 65-gallon cart, and we also provide bag tag services. In addition to that, we also do curbside recycling. I saw in some notices that was shared with you, but starting in 2006, Granger started providing curbside recycling at no additional cost. It was originally in bins or tubs, if you will. Around 2015, we started transferring those over into carts. In 2020, seems like a long time ago, we converted everybody in the community from tubs into carts. So we had taken on that expense to give residents more of an opportunity to recycle with that. And if I'm going too fast, if you have any questions, feel free to ask.
I'm so sorry. Can I put this towards you for the broadcast?
Sure.
Thank you.
Curbside recycling is single stream recycling. You get some examples of a picture of what curbside recycling looks like once it's tipped on a recycling floor. And I see you shaking your head. I know it looks crazy, right? We take everything to Emterra, which is in Ingham County. It's used by the city of Lansing, city of East Lansing. Granger takes all of its single stream recycling there. We are the largest provider of recycling material. So what happens with this recycling is it goes up onto a conveyor belt. I believe the last time I was at Emterra, they had 8 people sorting on the line. And then it goes through a bunch of different belts and from magnets to blowers to pull things out, and it separates. It's really quite impressive. It's a multi-million-dollar facility. I think we're pretty fortunate to have a facility like that located right in our community. So it takes those 8 basic types of material: office paper, the PET plastic, mixed paper, color plastic, cardboard, natural, steel, and aluminum. So all of those get pulled out of those belts with it. How we doing? Keep moving. Here's some numbers about Meridian Cycling right now. So 78% is what we show in 2023 of the people who are eligible are using the cart with their service. So just to share kind of an idea of Meridian Township, we service 82% of the residents. So there's about 13,500 households. We're serving over over 11,000 of those. So of the numbers of people recycling right now, we have just under 8,500 carts. Oh, I thought you were going to sneeze, so I was going to get you. 8,500 carts that we're recycling on a bi-weekly basis. And those are provided to the residents at no additional cost for that material as well, for that service. 2023, we did over 3 million pounds of recycling out of the community. So that is going to be strictly down to those 8 categories that we're going to look at. As a whole, in our relationship with Emterra, the contamination rate has been about 10% from the materials we bring in. It's about double of what the goal should be from it. So it's difficult to pinpoint any specific area that it's coming from, but I think that there tends to be a situation where people believe something should be recyclable and they put it in. I do not believe that it's done out of malice. It's done out of that's what they expect. We also provide curbside yard waste from April through November throughout the community with that. So that's a weekly service that we do, and we pick up the brush and the grass clippings and things like that from it. We also do bulk pickups. Residents can go on our website. They don't have to speak to anybody. They can speak to somebody if they want. They can call in, they can order it off of our portal, and we pick things up. So we're doing that with a separate truck than we do with our trash collection and our recycling collection. Additional services we provide, commercial containers. We do that for businesses, contractors, residential people. Maybe you're doing a house reno yourself, or you're doing cleanup. We provide those. We have a lot of commercial waste and cardboard recycling at businesses within the communities. Multi-unit housing facilities, we provide large containers. We also provide them with single stream recycling and carts. So we do have opportunities to do that with people. And I think that's my time.
So I'm going to jump in, as I mentioned, to the environmental steward portion of this. I do have up there deep dive. I put that there on purpose because a lot of people don't understand the backside of the industry. You hear a lot of things out there, but especially in relation to Granger, there's a lot of technology, a lot of investment, a lot of things that we're doing to be environmental stewards within this region when your cart actually leaves your driveway. Something to note here is the 14 million. So 14 million is how many touches we have annually. And that is between trash and recycling. And what I mean by touch, that's a cart that's actually picked up and tipped. So that is a huge number. And if you could imagine if we weren't around, where would that stuff go, right? So it's very important to kind of realize the volume of this and the importance of this essential service. What I have here is a landfill cross-section. So we know where your recycling goes, it'll go to Mterra, or if it's separated, we have a recycle center at our facility, Granger Waste Services does. So that separated stuff can be sorted and baled and sent to end users from our facility. The single stream goes to Mterra, but your trash actually goes to our landfill. For example, I will use our Wood Street landfill. We also have a Grand River landfill in Clinton County. Both of those are located there. Wood Street is 480 acres. Now, everyone would think, hey, 480 acres of a huge hole that's in the ground, and there's just trash going into it. Well, that's not actually the case. What we do is we have engineers on staff who work very closely with Eagle and the EPA as well. But their job is to actually design the future of the landfill, and the future of the landfill is designed into sections called cells. Our current cell we're using is around 14 acres. So here's an example of a cell. You can see it kind of looks like a bathtub on the bottom there. The goal is to keep everything in and not let anything come out unless it's actually designed to do so. Real quick, I just want to run through this picture. I'll get through the next step as well. But the bottom brown line you see in that design is actually it's clay. A representation of what you have to do through regulation is a minimum of 10 feet of clay. And then there's liner systems on top of that I'll go through in the next slide. You can see up here in the kind of this pinkish is actually layers of trash. So as a layer goes, we cover it, and then it kind of grows over time. And I want to be specific to these items right here. So this is a horizontal and vertical well collection system. So that actually collects landfill gas. And I'll get a little bit further into the specifics of those. But if you look over here to the left on this image, you will see what we call groundwater monitoring wells as well as gas monitoring wells. We have 44 parameters around our facility, and we check those quarterly along with Eagle and a third-party organization to make sure that the landfill is not affecting the environment. We want to be environmental stewards. We want to make the investment. We want to make sure we're doing things right. So the other facility has 39 parameters, but these are checked to make sure that nothing is escaping, and they do it in parameters so you could tell if it is, what direction it is going. So at this time, we're fortunate not to have any of those concerns. Our facility is working as it should. And again, I will just move on to the next step to talk a little bit more about the investment that we have. So as I talked about layers, so the 10 feet of clay is that first layer that goes under, is the first layer of a landfill cell. On top of that will be a material that's over here down in the bottom left, which is called bentomat. Bentomat is a very tightly woven material, and inside is a clay material called bentonite. So again, 14 acres of this stuff all the way along the bottom of a landfill cell. This is designed that if for any reason a hole gets punctured into this cell, bentonite reacts with water or liquid at the rate of 2 feet per inch. So any hole that goes in there, that's going to pop out and it's going to plug that hole and waterproof that hole up. That's what the design of this material is. On top of that, this next layer, we're going to put a plastic liner. So we have the clay, the Bentomat, and the plastic liner. And again, clay, if you're in Michigan and see a pond in someone's yard, that's designed to hold water in, right? It's not designed to allow water to escape through it very easily. So on top of, again, the Bentomat, we have this plastic liner. It's usually around 60 mils, which is, those two are waterproofing. Those first three layers are actually waterproofing agents. On top of that, we do a geotextile. Again, 14 acres for this example, and that's a tightly woven material, plastic cross membrane, and then another tightly woven material on the other side. And that's the super strong stuff. That's where you're not going to see many things be able to poke through that. But again, if they do, you have another protection layer underneath, which again, we want to protect the environment, the groundwater, and the surrounding area that we have there. It should be noted that this is very expensive. So our engineering team, they start around, it takes about 2.5 to 3 years to complete a cell. Through that process, again, we are purchasing all of these items and designing it to regulation or to exceed regulation that's currently in place with Eagle and EPA and Granger as an organization. We tend to try to exceed if possible. The next and last final layer is a sand and leachate collection system. You can see these black lines through. That's every 50 foot on center is a pipe, a perforated pipe that actually is designed to suck leachate out over time. So any liquid that goes through trash is considered leachate that sits at the bottom. What's very interesting about watching this process is that if it rained, you would see water collect in the corner. Now you would see this gentleman here with his device making sure that everything is absolutely to spec because it's at a 2% grade. So it's designed that that water goes there. That water is then sucked out and it goes to the wastewater treatment plant directly through pipeline systems. So we, again, water in a landfill is bad, so we want to make sure that we get it out of there. But I just want you to understand that this company is putting in the investment and the time and the effort to make sure that we have clean communities in our region and we're good neighbors. This is our wonderful professional engineer, Serenity. So Serenity does a great job of designing our gas well systems. And she has to do this to make sure we understand where they currently are, but where we plan to do them in the future to be the most efficient and collect the most landfill gas that is developed over time. So this image here with the two black pipes sticking out, that's actually a landfill well, and that a gas well, and that could potentially go down and be horizontal, or it could go directly down and be a vertical well. We have several of those throughout our facility. As organic waste go into landfills, it breaks down over time. So that creates landfill gas. I'm pretty sure this is probably pretty well known, but if not, that's why we want to talk about this. So in the past, you could just let it leak out. This is a long time ago. Or you can flare it off. But this company, in 1985, we were the first company to actually collect landfill gas in the state of Michigan. We piped it over to Motor Wheel, and they burned it off in the furnace and heated their facility in that manner. In 1991, Granger built an electric generation station at our facility, Wood Street, and followed that at Grand River as well. But what that did was took the gas and ran generators and sent electricity right into BWL's lines, which heated and provided energy for our homes and businesses in the region, which is pretty interesting. In 2017, the energy division was purchased by our energy partner, EDL. So EDL is an Australian company. And what they ended up doing in 2021, they built this state-of-the-art renewable natural gas facility, which is on site at our Wood Street facility. And when our gas is collected, it is transferred over to their facility where it is dried and it is filtered out through, again, state-of-the-art process. And 99.5 to 99.9% methane actually goes into Consumer Energy's pipeline. So technically, it's considered net zero because you're piping the gas to a facility that's then piping it, and that gas can travel wherever it needs to go, to heat homes, to heat businesses, to power CNG vehicles, all different types of things that methane gas can be utilized for. So this facility specifically, it removes approximately 9,000 tons of methane on an annual basis, which is equivalent to burning 50 million pounds of coal, or the CO2 that comes from burning 50 million pounds of coal. It also is equivalent to removing 5,700 cars off the road in terms of equivalency of greenhouse gases. So the energy that is created from this is around 870,000 MMBTU. And that is enough to power 8,400 homes for a year. Or another statistic is that it can charge your phone 5 billion times. So it's pretty interesting, the things that are out there. But this is an investment that we continue to make through the well system to be efficient, to remove that gas from our landfill, and then to work with an energy partner to turn it into a renewable energy resource, which is officially accepted within the new law that recently passed, the Clean Energy by 2040 within the state of Michigan. So that will continue to be seen as a renewable energy source. Moving on to a little bit of a deep dive is the environmental benefit, the pride that we have in our fleet and safety. Every day, our drivers and mechanics, they check our trucks to make sure that they're running in tip-top shape and that there's no issues which could cause any safety issues outside of our property. In addition, we frequently wash our trucks to make sure when it comes to your community, they are clean and good looking because, again, we know this is a prime community. So, in addition to others, we want to make sure that we represent our company and represent your community in a professional manner. We also invest in equipment and our people. And what I mean by that is that we buy new vehicles, new trucks on an annual basis. At the tune of the truck that you see here is around $430,000. So they're very expensive. But the thing about it is that we also have technology that is state of the art, things that you might not think about from a solid waste and recycling company. We have cameras on the trucks. We have tablets that allow us to be efficient, allow us to communicate with customer service or whoever we may need to throughout the process, and then allows us to, if there's any issues, kind of turn around and make sure that we fix the problem at least as soon as we possibly can, if that is the option. But efficiency and safety is something that's very important, both from a carbon footprint standpoint, but also making sure that we're using trucks like this with the arms that save several years of our employees and their backs as well. So as we make that transition, it's important. Just so you know that our active fleet are clean emission vehicles. According to the manufacturer and EPA, these do fit in within the clean emission engines that reduce the PM, particulate matter, and the nitrous oxide NOx to near zero levels, reducing emissions by over 95% within those engine systems that actually burn that stuff off. And we continue to invest millions of dollars annually to update to clean emissions vehicles, both in our fleet and our landfill as well. So, environmental stewardship, real quick, I just want to run through our recycling numbers. As we talked about earlier, Scott did a great job talking about how well this community does, but as an organization, we picked up and recycled almost a little over 41 million pounds of recyclables. So if you look at these numbers, any one of these fall under this category, so that you would save equivalency of 350,000 trees, save 84 million plus kilowatts per hour of electricity, and then reduce air pollution by 1.2 million pounds, conserve water at the rate of 143 plus million gallons, which is an amazing number, and then conserve landfill space of 68,400 cubic yards. And then we go down to your numbers, which are really impressive, honestly, for a township. This is great stuff. We know this community really pays attention to and wants to do the best they possibly can when it comes to recycling. So that 3.1 million number, you save 26,000 trees or saved 6.3 million hours of kilowatts through electricity, and then reduced air pollution by 93,000 pounds, conserved 10 million gallons of water, and then conserved 5,180 cubic yards of landfill space. And this is my final slide, but I want to talk about community involvement and supporting this community. It's something that we really care about, not only with Meridian, but all the communities that we serve, but we are quite involved in this region. So what we do to help support is recycling education. We go out to schools. We do work with community groups. I know I've given a presentation to Phil's group there for one time, and we work with neighborhood groups to help neighborhoods learn and make sure that they're doing the right with recycling. And then facility tours as well. You're more than welcome to come to our facility, and we'll plan a tour for you so you can see a little bit more about what I'm talking about. That's all with community relations, but continuing on, we volunteer. You can see we built beds here at Delta Dental not too long ago with our green team. This was in Meridian. We picked up over 600 pounds of trash one day. Partnerships and relationships, I work closely with Leroy and Dan and other individuals in this community to see how we can potentially work to provide recycling options for the community. And then we help to provide tips for some of those neighborhood groups. And then we sponsor several events throughout the community, celebrate Meridian, the recycling events that occur year after year, local schools, community organizations, and then we tend to help with in-kind donations where they make sense. And I believe we're sponsoring a wolf run here at Okemos Schools here shortly, 5K, 10K. But yeah, I just want to say again, thank you for your time, and I hope that was educational, but feel free to call me or ask me any questions outside of this meeting. So, any questions now?
Thank you very much, Mr. Hauser. Any board members, any questions? Trustee McCurtis?
Yes, I just have two quick questions.
Sure.
Can you, I think I know what it means, but can you define single stream recycling?
Yeah. So as shown here in this image, I'll just back up so you can see it. So it's a commingled version of material that is considered to be recyclable. It tends to be, for this community, glass. We have plastics 3 through 7. Not everyone wants to, I'm sorry, 1 through 7, but not everyone wants to deal with the 3 through 7s. We do accept those in this community. It is tin aluminum. We have the paper, different types of papers, depending on what they are. We have to be careful. Wrapping paper is not accepted because it's glossy. There's not a ton of fiber. But what it is it's commingled materials here that eventually, as you can see, this looks like a pile of trash. Depending on the contamination rate, more than likely all that will be separated and then turned into these bales where it'll go to end users depending on what material. So the definition is a little out there, right? But that's the problem, and that's where education comes into play, where we can help or work with the community to figure out what is and what isn't considered recyclable under the single stream arm. So.
And second question, thank you. And my other question is, how many communities are you just within the greater Lansing area, or are you in other states? How big is
we are not in other states. We're again, 1966, this company started right here in Lansing. We do take care of the general Lansing region. We have a facility, a transfer facility up in Alma. We have a hauling center down in Fowlerville. We have a hauling center in Cedar Springs, and then we have a transfer station down in Jackson. So those are basically our main area is within, I don't know, about this big within the state, in the center of the state. I don't know how to explain it exactly. I don't have a map up here, sorry, but we do not go out of state. And another thing about our landfill is we do not take Canadian or out-of-state trash. This is an agreement that we have with Clinton County. So just to give you an idea, you might be hearing some things outside of this room, but we do not accept that at our facility, just so you know.
Thank you.
Treasurer DeShane.
East Lansing has taken their garbage collection and recycling to a higher level. They're now equipping the trucks with cameras
Okay,
and giving residents feedback about what they're putting in their waste, recycling and waste bins. Is that a Granger project or is that an East Lansing project?
that was the East Lansing project. Yeah, we did follow it just a little bit to see what they were saying from it, but from an operations standpoint, I don't know whatever came of that. But I do know that that was an East Lansing project. Yeah.
That's my question. Thank you.
We do have cameras on the trucks. So there's 6 cameras on every truck. So inside the cab, front, both sides and from the rear, and one that shows what's going into the hopper. What East Lansing is doing that's unique is they're able to see some contamination with it to go specifically back to a house. So it's still kind of earlier technology. We tend to like to see things vet out a little bit before we're gonna make an investment like that into it. So we are certainly paying attention to it. We attend waste hauler conferences, so we stay on the cutting edge, but I'd like to see these things vet out.
Makes sense. Thank you.
Thank you. Trustee Wilson.
I understand that the bag tag program is not huge. I understand there are over 400 users in Meridian Township, and I'm one of them. And I'm curious, is there a plan to continue to use that for small households? To have that program available?
Yeah, we looked at the numbers, you're right there. Just under 400 people are currently using bag tag. We are committed to leaving that in Meridian Township. We're committed to leaving it really in our more dense communities.
Great.
So we will continue to offer that. Frankly, we looked at discontinuing it. I know you and I spoke one day.
I thought it was.
Yes,
Okay.
and we really were like, it's a benefit to households. We're there. Let's make it work for our partners.
Great. Well, it's a service we greatly enjoy having. And I also wanted to do a shout out to you for supporting the Hazlet Okemos Rotary golf outing in June.
I saw you sponsored it as well. I saw your name on it.
We all work on that.
That's great.
Number of
It was a
us.
nice day. Charles and I both
It
went.
was a great day. We enjoyed it.
Thank you.
Board members, any other questions? Well, Scott, Charles, thank you so much for coming and for presenting to us this
Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Our next presentation this evening comes from Suchir Nagasetti, who'll be here to talk to us a little bit about a proposed youth committee or youth commission here in the township. So if you would please join us at the podium.
Would this one work?
Yep.
Sure.
Yes.
Yep, you can just plug it in and then hit the big button. That's,
The big button on that?
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's got to push the cast button, and then it should notify you. Yeah. Yep, and then you should say yes. And then whatever.
Let's try it one more time.
Sometimes it takes a minute too.
I saw him wandering though.
Can you go to your desktop and open and see it? It should be trying to connect with you.
I can try unplugging it, plugging it again.
Call me right away.
There you go. Yep.
That one?
It should. Yeah. Sometimes it takes.
All
All right.
If you would please introduce yourself and let everyone else know who you are.
Hi, everyone. My name is Suchir Nagasetti. I'm a senior at Okemos High School. And
Hi, I'm Adi Sarda. I'm a rising junior at Okemos High School.
we are interested in starting a youth advisory council in Okemos, or in the Meridian Township, sorry. So why we would do it? So youth advisory committee, we think would have tons of upsides. First off would be the positive public image that we would get through doing it. First off, it would show the township's commitment to empowering the youth, and would show a more forward-thinking and innovative side to government and local side. Next biggest thing would be representation and inclusivity. The Youth Advisory Committee would make sure that all voices and perspectives would be represented in local decision-making processes. It could help create policies and programs supporting all residents, especially in the youth demographic. Third biggest thing would be community building. As some of you might know, I worked for State Representative Julie Brixey this fall and summer. And the biggest thing I noticed is that people interested in local government and local policies seem to be on the older side and not at all on the younger side. I think that starting something like this and putting younger people in positions where they're also involved in creating policy or being involved in being around that policy-making decisions, it could help generate a little bit more interest for people who are younger. So some areas that we would focus more on for the Youth Advisory Board would be community. So that could be community cleanup events, which should be in nature centers, parks, streets, waterways, or environmental conservation programs through recycling programs, tree planting initiatives, etc. Another big thing is mental health. Since the COVID-19 pandemic, mental health has been declining, especially in the youth. One way we could try to combat that would be through working with local mental health professionals and organizing seminars for stress and anxiety management. Another big thing for the youth that has been a problem but is decreasing is alcohol and substance usage. We could organize educational sessions on consequences of usage, as well as healthy coping strategies for young people and older people alike. Another big thing is diversity. Being people of color, we have noticed firsthand how diverse the community is becoming over the past couple of years. To make the community stronger, we could have art exhibitions, cultural festivals, and any way to help support the diversity in our community. Another very important thing for the community is local businesses. Local businesses are what make a community what it is. We can initiate campaigns to support small businesses through social medias, fundraisers, or shout-outs.
Many cities in the state of Michigan have implemented youth advisory boards, and they have been very successful. Some examples are shown on the board. One of them is East Lansing. They had multiple environmental cleanups in their first year. Another one is Grand Rapids. They have Kids Speaks, which is an annual forum that lets kids K through 12 speak to legislators and community leaders. Another one is Grand Rapids. They created a social media campaign for child abuse prevention. Farmington worked on an after-school tutoring program for all their kids in their district. And Holland, they planned food drives for community welfare, and they had trash cleanups at their Holland parks.
Just to kind of wrap it up, we have a bit of a tentative structure that we think will work. I talked to Scott about this and we shared some of our ideas. And some things that we kind of landed on there would be 8 members with maybe 2 chairpersons. 1 member from each grade from both Oakhurst High School and Hazlet High School would be chosen. Well, one idea that could be thrown around is 1 spot that would be available to a student that lives in Williamston or East Lansing, but is also part of the Meridian Township sector. It would be 14 to 18-year-old students that live in Meridian Township or attend Hazlet High School or Oakhurst High School, like I said. Applicants would be chosen through an interview process that would start this fall and would serve a year-long term that would start in November, preferably, if that could work. And 1 staff member would be selected as the liaison to work with the committee, and meetings could be monthly or every 2 months to start things going as our first year. That's all we have for you. Try to keep it short and to the point. Thank you all for your time.
Thank you. If you could stick around just in case any board members have questions.
Oh, yeah, of course.
Members of the board, any questions for Suchir?
Yes.
Trustee Trezise.
Thank you. You're both from Oakhurst High School. Have
Yes,
you
sir.
had any contact with Hazlet High School?
Not with the administration, but with students who might be interested.
Now, students are more important than the administration
Yeah.
in this situation. Okay. Do you have support there?
Yes, we do. We do.
Thank you.
Thank you for your question.
Thank you so much.
Treasurer DeShane.
If you established a budget for what you think you're going to need to get this group off to a start?
No, we haven't established a budget yet. That's something that I thought we could think about in the future. But me, Scott, and I talked about not starting with anything too big, hopefully generating our own money through fundraisers or whatever. It could be something like that, but that's something we have to look into.
And I want to thank you for bringing this idea before the board. It's exciting, and you're right, a lot of groups are, especially in this township, are weighted and aged to the older end of the range, and it's really great to see a group like this getting youth involved with tons of energy and great ideas and lots of passion for these service projects, amongst other things.
Thank you, Phil. Thank you.
Trustee McCurtis.
Yes, first I want to commend you for coming up with this idea and looking to develop it. How many youth or how many young men and women your age are interested or approached you about, forming this?
It's something that I know a lot of people at Oakland's High School, because I've seen it happen. People are very interested in government. They have all these ideas, what they think they should do, I wish I could do this, I wish I could do this. We hear stuff like that all the time, and if there was an avenue for people to be able to actually do things about it, I think everyone would love to be a part of it. I know that the friends that I've talked to, like Addie, we've talked about this. We think it's a great idea. They'd love to do it. But obviously we haven't reached out to a lot of people to that point because we don't know if it's going to be a real thing. But we believe that everyone would be interested.
Thank you. Thank you.
Trustee Wilson.
How is your focus different from action?
I'm sorry?
How is your focus different from the action group over at the high school?
Our action group is just volunteering. So what they do is they help with they help with tutoring and stuff like that, or they work with volunteering with the local 5Ks or runs or fundraisers and everything. They do a great job, but we want to go a little bit larger scale than they do. We want to make it so because action is such a big club, not that many people that are in it are as driven to actually do something about it. So we want to make it an avenue where people can actually make a little bit of a larger change.
Thank you.
Thank you. So I'm going to call out Tim at the back of the room. He's our interim township manager there. I would highly recommend that you swap contact information, and at least that will be our staff will be able to help to get the ball rolling in terms of, what the next steps might look like. How do we work with our staff to, look at how we get this put together. There likely will have to be something that the board adopts to formally approve it, if that's what the pleasure of the board seems to be. And so we'll have to get that process started with our staffs to make sure that we can support it in that way. They'll bring us something in the next meeting or two, maybe two. We've got the budget coming up to look at for formal approval.
Okay.
But again, thank you so much for coming before us this evening and presenting this idea. I agree with my colleagues that it's nice to see younger folks getting excited about service in the township. And I think this is a really interesting idea.
Thank you for saying that. All right, thank you for your time, everyone. That's all it for today. I will exchange contact information.
Terrific.
But thanks for listening.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next up on our agenda is item 5, citizens address agenda and non-agenda items. There are several opportunities for public comment at tonight's meeting. Members of the public who wish to address our agenda or any item not on our agenda have an opportunity to do so at the beginning of the meeting now, or as well as at the end of the meeting. I believe I put my agenda at the back. We do not have any public hearings, so it's just those 2 opportunities for public remarks this evening. Those who do wish to address the board must complete a green card, which are located at the table near the door, and present that card to the board or a member of the township staff prior to the start of public comment. When it's your turn, I'll call you up to the podium to speak to the topics indicated. While it's not required, it's helpful for the sake of our meeting minutes if you can provide the name and address at the beginning of your remarks. At this time, I do not have any green cards for public comment. Anyone wishing to make public comment at this time? Seeing none, we'll close public comment at 6:44 PM. Next on our agenda is item number 6, our interim township manager report. We'll turn things over to our interim township manager, Tim Schmidt.
Thank you, Mr. Supervisor. I'll be brief. Couple of things. The community survey is going well. We've gotten over 250 responses back from the dedicated mailing, and last check was just shy of 40 on people that have just taken it online. In and of themselves, relatively innocuous numbers as we're going forward. The interesting part, actually, is that we've had 9 people utilize the visually impaired function on the survey, which our partners have noted is extremely high. So that's great. That tells me that we are reaching a different population than I think we would normally have reached. So we're very glad that we had that option, and are going to be, it's going to be interesting to see if there are any unique crosstabs that come from that. So some more to come on that. As everyone's aware, back to school in Okemos is coming up. More to the point, the school construction is going well, and we have renewed our agreement with the school district, mailed it back today, to continue building services for them during this time. We've had a great partnership with the school district and their construction firm, Chrisman, and look forward to continuing it for many years to come, as we are early in this process with them. I know I sent an email to the board, but for members of the general public that are watching me right now, if you want to help paint the community mural for the Farmers Market anniversary, tomorrow night is one of our next paints. It's the fall painting through their 4 seasons. This is the 3rd of the 4th. We'd love to have you guys come out and help us out.
What time is that at?
I believe it starts at 6 o'clock. I would like to double check though to confirm that, but it's during the farmers market tomorrow. You know, I've said this before, and I just want to reiterate it because it's like official now. Our cadet program really pays a lot of dividends, and we have 2 cadets now officially in the academy that we've sponsored, and that they are going to eventually be police officers with us, hopefully. And so I can't say enough about that program, and Chief Grillo has done a great job, as did his predecessor, of getting new and quality people in those seats, because a lot of times that is the main contact someone has when they come to the police department for some issue. So, you know, kudos to those cadets that are continuing on their career path. And not to steal the thunder of anybody on the board, but just a reminder, the Rotary Luncheon is September 10th. I look forward to picking up some tickets shortly. So that's all I have right now. I'd be happy to answer any questions the board might have.
Any questions for Manager Schmidt? Seeing none, thank you very much. Next on our agenda is item 7, board member reports of activities and announcements. Any board members with activities and announcements today? Trustee Wilson.
We had a fun time at the Pride event. Sold a little bit of beer, looked at some very entertaining outfits, and dogs that were colorfully arrayed. And it was just a good time for all. The band was just superior. So we're looking forward to the next year that we'll have that event. Thank you.
Thank you. Other board members? Treasurer DeShane.
Thank you. Last week, I participated in the American Public Treasurers Association conference, and I sat for and passed the Advanced Certified Public Funds Investment Manager exam. So I'm looking forward to using that new information, particularly in this changing interest rate environment that we're about to go through, with many questions about where interest rates are headed, likely down. The question is, how fast will they go down? Anyway, it was a very worthwhile conference, and worth the time to prepare for the exam. That's all I have. Thank you.
Fabulous. Thank you. And congratulations.
Thank you.
Other board members with reports? Seeing none, we'll move on to our next agenda item, which is agenda item number 8, approval of the agenda. Do we have a motion to approve the agenda? Trustee Wilson.
Move to approve the agenda.
Support.
Supported by Treasurer DeShane. Any updates or comments on the agenda? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Next on our agenda is item 9. We have our consent agenda. We have communications from the public with the Township Board. We have one set of regular meeting minutes from August 8th. I will ask whoever makes the motion to note, it appears as though our draft minutes as proposed indicate that a motion failed to suspend our rules when in fact the motion passed to suspend our rules. That's for item something B,
9B.
12B, from the meeting minutes.
Oh, yeah.
So if you would please keep that in mind when you're making a motion. Also, we have the bills, a public hearing to set for our township budget on September 3rd. Adding one staff member to the township employee credit card users, and acceptance of the Red Cedar multi-jurisdictional clearing grant from the county. So that concludes the consent agenda. Do we have a motion for the consent agenda? Trustee Wilson.
Move to approve the consent agenda with one correction to 12B, indicating that the motion to suspend the rules was passed rather than failed.
Do we have a support for that motion?
I support that motion.
Treasurer DeShane supports the motion. The consent agenda does require a roll call vote. We will ask Deputy Clerk Gordon to please call the roll.
Supervisor Hendrickson?
Yes.
Treasurer DeShane?
Yes.
Trustee McCurtis?
Yes.
Trustee Sunland?
Yes.
Trustee Trezise?
Yes.
Trustee Wilson?
Yes.
Motion carries 6-0.
Thank you very much. Next on our agenda is item 10, questions for the attorney. We have none. Item 11 is hearings. We have none. And item 12A is next then, which is text amendment number 2024-04, local prosecution of marijuana violations ordinance for final adoption. And for this, we have interim manager Schmidt.
Thank you. And just to correct myself from previously, I was, right when I got back to my desk, I was reminded the mural is 3:30 to 7.
3:30 to 7.
Thank you. So 6 was accurate, just not entirely accurate.
Don't all show up at 6.
Well, don't all show up at 6, please. So this is in front of you for the third and final time. This is an ordinance to allow for local prosecution of marijuana violations. It was brought forward by Township's prosecuting attorney, Colin Harkness. This functionally allows us to levy the violations locally and bring the fines in locally. It will mirror existing law. We would recommend approval at this time. Staff has published it in a newspaper of record pursuant to the requirements and the direction of the board at our last meeting. Be happy to answer any questions.
Board members, any questions? Trustee Sunland.
Not quite a question, but I did notice in reading it that, that any violations, fines are going to the township rather than the county. And I think that's important to be, remembered, because that's one of the reasons why we're doing this. So that
Absolutely.
Yep. Just wanted to point that out.
Thank you very much, Trustee Sunland. Other board members? Trustee Trezise.
I would just make a motion to approve,
Motion to adopt.
motion to adopt the resolution approving ordinance 2024-04, an ordinance to allow for local prosecution of certain marijuana violations.
Support.
Supported by Trustee Wilson. Any further discussion on this item? Trustee Trezise.
The only thing I'd say about this is we've looked at this 2 or 3 times prior to this, and for all the reasons discussed in those prior meetings, it is a good step to take on behalf of the township.
Other board members? I will add that, as Trustee Sunland pointed out, this is essentially mirroring state law that already exists. We're not creating new violations here. We are simply bringing this into the township's responsibility and purview. And it does allow us to have control over the prosecution of those cases, as well as the revenue that comes from the prosecution of those cases and the fines and fees. And so I will be very happy to support this. Certainly, Mr. Harkness does an excellent job in prosecuting on behalf of the township, and we suspect that that will continue with these new responsibilities. Any further discussion? Seeing none, this is an ordinance amendment. We'll ask Deputy Clerk Gordon to call the roll.
Supervisor Hendrickson.
Yes.
Treasurer DeShane.
Yes.
Trustee McCurtis.
Yes.
Trustee Sunland.
Yes.
Trustee Trezise.
Yes.
Trustee Wilson.
Yes.
Motion carries 6-0.
Thank you very much. Next up on our agenda is item 12B, ordinance 2024-07 to rezone 2 parcels at 350 Hazlet Road and the adjacent vacant parcel from RR Rural Residential to RA Single Family Residential for final adoption. And we'll have interim township manager Tim Schmidt give us the update on this one.
Thank you, Supervisor Hendrickson. Consistent with the board's direction at the last meeting, we did publish notice of intent to adopt this ordinance in the newspaper of general record prior to this meeting. This ordinance would rezone approximately 139 acres adjacent to Phase 3 and 4 of the existing Copper Creek subdivision. This includes the single-family house at 350 Hazlet Road and the large adjacent vacant parcel. Current zoning is RR Rural Residential. Proposed rezoning is RA Single Family Residential, which is consistent with the master plan and consistent with the surrounding zonings. So at this time, staff would recommend approval of this rezoning to allow continued development of Copper Creek development.
Thank you very much. Any discussion on this topic? Trustee Trezise.
This is just a continuation or expansion of the build-out of Copper Creek, which has been a very successful development and will hopefully continue to be so. And there's a lot of wetlands on this property, so it's hard to estimate how many housing units might be possible, but it will be consistent with the development around, and I think it's a good change in the zoning.
Terrific. Other board members? Do we have a motion for the agenda item this evening? Treasurer DeShane.
I move to adopt the resolution approving ordinance number 2024-07, an ordinance to rezone 2 parcels at 350 Hazlet Road, parcel ID number 33-02-02-12-400-003, and the adjacent vacant parcel ID number 33-02-02-12-200-015 from RR Rural Residential to RA Single Family Residential.
Do you have a support?
Support.
Supported by Trustee Trezise. Any further discussion on this topic? Treasurer DeShane.
This is one we've discussed before. This one actually goes back almost 7 years when the board voted to include this parcel in the outside the urban services boundary, so it would allow for water and sewer. It was initially approved back in around 2000, then taken out during the Great Recession, and in 2017 or 18, the board put it back in. We need more housing in the township, and this is an ideal place for it. Their sales have been outstanding, and they're anxious to build more homes to allow more residents to move into the township within our defined areas. So I'm proud to make this motion. I think it's an excellent addition to our township's housing stock.
Thank you very much. Other board members? All right. We'll go ahead and ask Deputy Clerk Gordon to please call the roll.
Supervisor Hendrickson.
Yes.
Treasurer DeShane.
Yes.
Trustee McCurtis.
Yes.
Trustee Sunland.
Yes.
Trustee Trezise.
Yes.
Trustee Wilson.
Yes.
Motion carries 6-0.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Scott. Deputy Clerk Gordon, when we do roll call votes, what we typically do is we move, so the first person being called moves down the board line, so just we alternate who gets called first.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. Next on our agenda is item 12C, selection of the firm for a township manager search. Director Tiethoff had to step out this evening, so I've agreed to do our introduction for this topic. This was before us for a short period of time at our last meeting. However, the materials that were provided to us were quite robust in advance of that meeting and then again in advance of this meeting, including 6 firms who have submitted very comprehensive plans for how they would intend to assist the township board in completing this search. The 6 firms that are that have applied are Amy Cell Talent, Clovity Inc., GovHR USA, 100K Job Hunt, the Michigan Municipal League, and Raftalus, which I may have mispronounced, I'm now realizing. Either way, Director Tiethoff has done a very good job of providing also a summary that was included in our packet of some of the important information that came along with those, within those submissions. And at this point, we are just a little bit behind schedule, but it would be my recommendation that the board discuss the pros and cons of these applicants and select a search firm this evening. This is our second opportunity to look at it, so we are not in need of suspending our rules to do so. And with that, we will open the floor to any discussion on the applicants before us for the township manager search firm. Trustee Trezise.
To say there was robust information provided is probably an understatement. But I did read through all of it. And I think, just from the surface, I would eliminate consideration for 100K Job Hunt and Clovity Incorporated. Job Hunt has been in existence for about a year, less than a year, and appears to be almost entirely online search, and I don't think it's appropriate for this position. Clovity was established 15, 16 years ago, but they haven't really given us a price. They have an hourly rate with no estimate as to how much time they will take, and I think that's too much risk in a search like this. The others have provided at least a base rate with add-ons, but those two I would consider eliminating at this point and going forward on the other 4 for discussion.
Thank you. I agree with that assessment for those two. I would also look to eliminate Raftalus. They appear to have very little Michigan experience and are also concurrently the most expensive of the 6 options, with the unknown of Clovity.
Well, and they also, I mean, it seems compared to the other applications we received, they have padded their staffing needed for this more than maybe necessary, at least based on the other applications. So I agree with eliminating Raftalus also.
Other board members? Trustee Wilson.
I'll go one step further and suggest that we eliminate Government HR USA. They are located in California. Does not appear they've done work anywhere near the state of Michigan. So I concur with your assessments that I believe we should go with a firm that is in-state and understands the state and how government works.
And that was Government HR?
That's Government HR USA.
Okay. So that leaves us with 2, unless other board members disagree with the assessments we've had thus far. I see some shaking heads. Treasurer DeShane.
I agree. I think the 2 that stood out for me were Amy Cell Talent and the MML's proposal.
I see some nodding heads now. That's good. We're 2/3 of the way there. So anyone want to take up how they feel about Amy Cell versus MML? Trustee Sunland?
Well, I'm looking at MML, and I think that they had a very reasonable price, and they have external knowledge of the Freedom of Information Act, which is very near and dear to our hearts, and the Open Meetings Act. So I just think that they have a wealth of government based knowledge to offer us, and they had a good price.
Okay, thank you. Trustee Wilson. I'm sorry, Treasurer DeShane actually was before you.
Go ahead.
Thank you. The Amy Cell response jumped out to me. We all know about the MML, and in fact, our former supervisor works for the MML as one of their recruiters. So Jerry Richards. Amy Cell's response, I like the breadth in the scope of the clients she's worked with. Having done 1,500 searches since they've been in operation 8 years ago is really impressive. They're a very active firm. There's just a certain energy to their response. We are looking for a national search, and I think we might get more of that broader perspective by stepping outside the MML. Not that I think the MML would be a bad choice. I think we might get something broader from the Amy Cell talent team. That's my thoughts.
Thank you. Trustee Wilson.
I took a look at both of these very closely also, and MML has an excellent reputation. They have assisted other communities, but my biggest concern with MML is that the individual that they has signed to us has only been there for a year and a half. She's not even listed on the staff directory. I did some investigation just to see how they compared. So that concerned me because I think that someone with not a lot of experience, granted she has, the individual has been in local government, city government primarily, but I was very concerned that not enough executive search experience. Whereas Amy Cell Talent, the lead on our project would be Amy Cell herself, according to their information. And I do have some history with Amy Cell. She was at the MEDC, Michigan Economic Development Corporation, for a couple of years while I was there concurrently. And she has an excellent reputation, sterling. So my feeling is that we will get a better search from Amy Cell Talent.
Trustee Trezise.
And I was also looking at these two primarily, and I agree with Trustee Wilson. I thought the Michigan Municipal League application was, unlike many of the others, rather thin on detail. Named one individual and then referred to someone that would check legal and someone that would check something else without giving any background of them. I am concerned that they would focus on Michigan, and I couldn't tell from what they said whether they have a reach beyond the state that is as robust as Amy Cell appears to. So I would, and the prices start out at the same price. There are additional costs, so I don't think that's a determining factor on this. Amy Cell may cost more over the long term because it's not a Michigan-located operation, but it's hard to say depending on. Is it Michigan?
Oh, yeah.
I thought it was.
It's in Ypsilanti.
I'm sorry, you're right. So that probably just depends on how they figure out what's covered in the 18.5 and what isn't. So, but I thought Amy Cell, the presentation was exceptional.
Yeah, these two companies, it came down to those two for me as well. I don't think we can go wrong with either one, to be honest with you. I'm going to give the slight edge to the Michigan Municipal League because of their, not only their reputation, but they are, they have the experience of kind of the local angle as well. I get that we want to have a broad search, but I also like the feel of having a company that understands who we are as well and what we have a tendency to look for, and we also have somewhat of that local connection too with a former township manager being with the Michigan Municipal League. So they just have a slight edge for me, but honestly, I don't think we can go wrong with either one of these two companies.
I agree with that comment. We could do well with either of these two firms. There is a certain, to me, a cachet that comes along with the Michigan Municipal, I can't say it, Michigan Municipal League, in that they also did our previous search and provided to us some excellent candidates at that time. One thing I did note that I think Trustee Trezise pointed out, it is an 18.5 for the full cost for Amy Cell Talent. There are at almost every line item additional fees that would be tacked on. And I do think it is important that some of those we have, I think, expressed an interest in doing. For example, the community reception has been discussed at the beginning of this process as something that we probably probably would like to do. And hosting that or gathering feedback from that is an additional charge of $1,000. And so I just want to make sure that we're going into it with our eyes wide open, that there might be some additional charges, there will be some additional charges based on what we already know. That said, I think, I could go either way on this one. I think that it's funny, I'd made notes on all 6 of them as I was reviewing the materials. And what I noted was that I didn't have anything ill to say about Michigan Municipal League. And it didn't occur to me until Trustee Trezise mentioned it, but it very well could be because the proposal was thin on details. There's nothing wrong to say because they didn't say a whole lot in terms of the detail of how they would actually perform the search. And so as I consider it further, I think that perhaps Amy Sell might be indeed who we should go for, who seems to, if they bring the same energy to the proposal as they do to the search, that I think that they would be a good firm for us to work with. Any further discussion? Treasurer DeShane.
Based on the consensus I'm hearing around the table, I'm going to make a motion. I move to approve the selection of Amy Sell Talent as the search firm to conduct a national search to fill the position of Township Manager for Meridian Charter Township.
Support.
Moved by Treasurer DeShane, supported by Trustee Wilson. This does require a roll call vote. Deputy Clerk Gordon, would you please call the roll?
Treasurer DeShane?
Yes.
Trustee McCurtis?
Yes.
Trustee Sumlin?
Yes.
Trustee Trezise?
Yes.
Trustee Wilson?
Yes.
Supervisor Hendrickson?
Yes.
Motion carries 6-0.
Okay, thank you very much. And we will ask Director Teethoff to make contact with Amy Sell Talent to let them know that they have been awarded the contract to do so, as well as the other applicants to make them aware of their not having been awarded the contract. And so we will ask her to do that for us. Next on our agenda is item 12D, the White Hills Lake South Number 1 Public Street Lighting Improvement Special Assessment District Number 428, Resolution 5. And we will turn things over to Interim Manager Schmidt.
This is the last piece of this puzzle. We have previously held a public hearing on the matter, 2 in fact, had no objections from property owners. And so this is in front of you this evening to adopt Resolution 5, allowing the streetlights to then be installed.
All right. Thank you very much. Board members, any discussion on this? Trustee Trezise?
I would move to approve the White Hills Lake South Number 1 Public Street Lighting Improvement Special Assessment District Number 428, Resolution Number 5, which approves the final special assessment roll, adopts the amount of $1,521.54 per lot as the first year assessment, and the amount of $720.55 per lot, subject to adjustment as the annual assessment thereafter.
Support.
Moved by Trustee Trezise and supported by Trustee Wilson. Any discussion on this matter? Trustee Trezise?
We've looked at this several times. It's something that the neighborhood wishes, or that area of the development wishes to install. The numbers are reasonable. They have chosen their lights that they wish, and I see no reason that we can't go ahead with it.
Any other comments? I agree. By the time it gets to Resolution 5, we've talked about this about 6 or 7 times for something that the folks in that neighborhood have asked for and have now been very patient in waiting for. So I'm happy to support it. Seeing as this is a money-based resolution, we'll ask Deputy Clerk Gordon to call the roll.
Trustee McCurtis?
Yes.
Trustee Sunland,
Yes.
trustee Trezise.
Yes.
Trustee Wilson.
Yes.
Supervisor Hendrickson.
Yes.
Treasurer DeShane.
Yes.
Motion carries 6-0.
Okay. We do find ourselves at the end of our action items this evening. Then we've been here for about an hour and 15 minutes. We'll have for a 5-minute recess. We'll reconvene at 7:20. It stands at recess to call the chair.
Come on.
It's at a tight 5 minutes.
Play by ear. We've got like Teams resources and others.
Yeah, look, we're tracking down.
He's coming. I wanted to say.
Thanks, sir.
Can you call Phil back in?
We'll bring ourselves back to order at 7:21 PM. Next on our agenda is item 13A, special use permit number 2417, Hazlet Gallery Incorporated, 2119A Hazlet Road, a recreational marijuana retailer, and turn things over to interim manager Schmidt.
Thank you very much. This is the second of the recreational marijuana conditional licensees that has started going through and is in process for special use permit review. This is a facility, this is an existing building at the southeast corner of Hazlet and Oakham's Road. Existing shopping center. They are taking up a suite within the shopping center. They were one of the original medical licensees who started construction. So this is the first one, started construction. The last discussion we had, they had started construction. This is the second one that started construction during COVID, prior to COVID, and has kept their permits alive, but did not at the time move forward with the recreational license or the medical licensing. And so they are now back. During the recreational application window that the board opened in January, this was the only applicant for this district. Therefore, it was reviewed by the marijuana subcommittee, recommended for a conditional license. The board did approve that conditional license subject to their special use permit being submitted within 60 days. It was submitted. It has been reviewed by the Planning Commission. The Planning Commission held a public hearing in June, received no input from the public, and then they further discussed it in July and unanimously recommended approval to the board. The applicant is here this evening to answer any questions you might have. I don't have a lot to offer on this one. It's a space within an existing building that they've had a lease on for several years now and is partially built out, and they will finish that once this is in place. Be happy to answer any questions that the board members might have.
Thank you. Board members, Trustee Wilson.
May I have the applicant come to the podium, please? I noticed that this proposal is a little bit different from the one that we passed at our last meeting because you're a subleasor, leasee. And how long, it looks like the term of your lease is 5 years?
I believe it's actually 6. I believe it ends next year, but I believe we do have options for additional years on that. And if you'd like to, I can explain a little bit of the sublease.
Would you please?
Yeah, so when we first came into this project, the owner of the applicant is actually the owner of the leasing company too. But he tends to sublease to his operating entities in case something were to happen with the operating entity. He'd still have the ability to control the lease and then move a new entity in there. It's asset diversification. It's not because he does anything. It's just like if you own a business and you own your property where your business is at, you don't really want to put the property and the business into the same organization, because if you have a problem with the business and your business gets sued, well, they can take your business, but they're not going to be able to take your property too. Whereas if you have one organization that has the business and the property in that same organization, you get in trouble with your business, you get sued, they end up taking your property and your business. So really, it's just that corporate veil to put up in there.
So do you have an arm's length relationship with your leaseor?
With the actual landlord?
Yes, the leaseor who set up the sublease to you, to your entity.
It's not my entity. I represent the applicant. I'm the attorney.
Okay.
The subleaser and the subleasee are both controlled by the applicant.
Okay. And you said you're on year 5 of this 5-year agreement, or possibly 6 year?
Yeah, I believe we were getting up on year 5. I'd have to go back and check the lease right now, but I mean, I think we started this in 2019, I believe, is when we first started going through this process.
So what's your intention now? if you were to receive this special use permit?
To build out and get open as soon as possible.
And then how does that affect your sublease?
The sublease just keeps going, and then we would intend to renew our lease. The lessor would renew, and then we'd renew our sublease.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any other board members with questions? Treasurer DeShane.
The space here is 1,600 square feet, is that correct? Question for staff, with the special use permit limit this operation to 1,600 square feet? Or if they had additional options for additional space, could they expand?
It would be limited to what is in the application in front of you.
Thank you.
Other board members? So as with any special use permit, we look at these applications based on the special use permit criteria that we have in our ordinance. These applications do come with additional scrutiny, of course, that was built into the ordinance through the licensure, the subcommittee, the whole mess of things that get done before it gets to this point. I would like to say that I've been very pleased with the responses, the information we received from this applicant. By my read of it, they do appear to meet the special use permit criteria as laid out in our ordinance. And I have no issues with this particular applicant for the special use permit based on the information provided. So thank you very much for submitting a complete application that addresses any potential concerns that the board might have had. I think this is a good application moving forward. Any other board members? This item is on for discussion this evening, not for action. Seeing no major objections to the applicant based on the application provided, we'll bring this back at our next meeting for action. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next on our agenda is item 13B, initial 2025 budget discussion. Interim Township Manager Schmidt, welcome back.
Thank you.
Seeing a lot of you tonight.
You know, it's good to get my face out every once in a while. I know I don't get to these very often, so I appreciate the opportunity. So this is one of those things that when I first started was a discussion with the board that they wanted to, before we actually submitted the draft budget plan, they wanted to at least get an initial discussion, conversation going about what it's going to look like, where are the priorities at, what can we do? And so this is our attempt to do that. We had previously had a discussion with the board prior to us starting. And so what we did is we shared our initial budget asks that the M team had put together with the board, got the board's feedback, and then staff went to work on developing the budget. And so what's in front of you this evening is sort of an initial high-level look at it. We don't have any of the line item in there yet or anything like that because we're still going to finalize that post this discussion and post the ARPA discussion after this. But wanted to go through a couple of the funds. By and large, if the fund isn't mentioned here, it's pretty much just business as usual moving forward. And so starting with the general fund, obviously the biggest one, limited increases this year because the police and fire salary increases, which were very much needed, are now fully online within the general fund. And so ballpark, that's around $825,000 between the two, between the 24 budgeted year and the 25 budgeted year, because this happened midstream. So the original budget to this year's budget. For comparison's sake, property tax increase about $400,000. Police and fire millage is about another $250,000. So revenue in general is up about $1 million. This is almost $1 million, especially when you take into account pension costs. And so this pretty much took up the majority of the flex in the budget. I will also point out something that's not in here, but is important is the MERS. Oh, no, I did mention it. Good for me. The MERS actuarial assumption that changed this year. It went down. The evaluation assumption went down 7 basis points to 6.93 instead of 7 at the base level. This is also last year, the phase-in, which came from the study that was done 5 years ago to discuss their underlying assumptions and had the effect of substantially increasing most communities' annual required contribution. And so the long and the short of it is our MERS contribution went up more than we would expect this year as well. And so what is in the general fund budget right now? Obviously, I've listed pretty much everything that's in here. I'll hit the highlights real quick. One, went ahead and budgeted 4 listening sessions again this year, since that's been a budget amendment in years past. Figured we might as well put that in up front. They've been very well received. It's a good outreach for the board, and I think we should probably continue those. One main personnel update in this is the addition of a part-time human resource employee. This is the only actual general fund budget. And candidly, almost all the M team came to me and said, look, I know I'm asking for something, but that's what we really need. Tried to figure out a way to make this full-time to start, but I think that's a bit of a stretch. The second item here, and the one that we still may try and get in pending the discussion this evening, is the fire inspector. That is the one that I think probably from an operations perspective is the next most needed one. But I think the key, and I said this before and I'll say it again, we have run a tight and lean organization for a while now, and we're starting to see some fraying on the edges. And so I need to try and help fix that, and that's what this starts to do. The other 2 personnel-related items in the general fund are both kind of changes from existing. One, we've been told that our beloved Leroy Harvey is going to retire this year after his long service with the community. And we are tossing around the idea of turning that into a full-time sort of environmental engineer position and seeing what that can do. We don't have the details yet. It's actually not that big of a hit to the budget, so we have included it now. But details still need to be developed from that. And the other one is the addition of a second lieutenant in the police department. In looking at Chief Gurlow's org chart, without the second lieutenant, it's like a ship leaning at like an 80-degree list, just because with the one lieutenant, everything keeps seeming to go left. And so we need to balance out his org chart a little bit, and this is a relatively modest improvement. Additionally, it gives us opportunity for advancement within the department, and thinking down the road after we've hired all these new officers in the past several years, we want to give them opportunities to be in different areas of specialization and opportunities for advancement down their career. And so this is a good starting point. A couple other items that I will point out. The striker contract will come into the general fund this year, pending our discussion after this. There's some office furniture replacement in the police department, a bunch of police equipment, but that's relatively it. It's a relatively lean general fund budget. Couple of reductions at this point. We have paused the climate sustainability grants because we haven't actually expended any yet this year. So we kind of want to see how that goes before I renew it. That's something that's a very easy add mid-year if they go well. The police overtime budget has been reduced because we're fully staffed, and we expect that the overtime budget should stabilize next year. And we're in a comfortable place where we're at. The 2 main holds that I'm proposing this year are a pause on the general fund transfer to local roads and a pause on the additional contribution to our pension liability, not police and fire based. We will still make that $1.5 million contribution that is built into it's hard baked into the budget, actually, in the back. God bless all the staff that have helped me out in the last 2 months. It took me a long time to find that one. We finally figured it out, but it is hard baked in there. The other piece generally became like an end of year payment that if we could figure it out within the budget, we made it. We're proposing to put that on hold. Parks Fund, Parks is expected to have another very busy year. The Parks Commission has reviewed it. Couple of things I'll point out. There is a huge upswell of desire for a cricket field in this region. And so they're going to start the process of looking into that next year. We've had some really interesting discussions about where that might go and the partnerships we might be able to bring to the table. And so that's really exciting, especially after U.S. cricket sort of started taking off this year. Restoration of the Town Road baseball field, and the other one I want to point out is the inclusive playground installation at Town Road Park. That's for all abilities, so zero entry, things that can be done by people of all ages and all abilities, and that's really exciting. If you look at the use of the one that was installed in downtown Lansing, which is a much bigger scale, you'll see that is a very popular thing, and they are starting to look into spreading those throughout the community. This is going to become, you kind of wonder whether this is the new norm in playground design. But we'll see down the road a little bit. Pedestrian bike path fund, we are planning on construction of phase 3 of MSU to Lake Lansing. We've gotten some good news recently, and so we are moving ahead with putting that in the budget this year. We expect it will happen. If it doesn't, functionally what happens is that revenue and expenditure just gets bumped to 26 then, because it's a grant funded thing that whenever we end up pulling the money down is when we spend it. We are proposing 4 projects out of the capital projects fund. Installation of the generator at the service center, solar panel installation at the historic village, renovation of the bathrooms here in the municipal building, and the finish of the interior painting at the public safety building. I know we've talked about the fire door project a lot in the last year. The costs came in roughly where I expected them to, which is high. And so we are continuing through the design process that was authorized by the board. We're going to get everything ready to go to bid, and then we're going to chase some grant funding next year. We have a couple of good angles that we're pretty happy about. And then I'm going to talk about, I'm going to skip sewer and water for a second, just talk about motor pool briefly. It's another big year, but we appear to be real close to the horizon on the motor pool. There's only, by our current calculations, one major replacement remaining. It's the Vector truck that'll happen in 2026. And so we can take a deep breath, I think, on the motor pool here real soon. We're pretty confident of that. And so jumping back to water and sewer. So right now, sewer fund's in pretty solid shape, modest proposed rate increase, and a change to the ready to serve fee. There's 2 major projects out of sewer: replacement of the Forest Hills lift station and rehabilitation of a sewer line in the Tower neighborhood. Those both need to happen next year. Water fund is in a much tougher position. We are proposing a hefty increase this year, and happy to discuss that further with the board. We still will continue to easily have the lowest rates in the region, and it's not even close. It would take many, many years of this to catch up. The only project that's going to happen is the meter replacement project, which needs to happen. The one project I will point out that we will start looking for ways to fund sooner rather than later is the Grand River Gate Valve project. The long and the short of this is, if there is a break in Grand River, call it near Playmakers, we would have to shut down a substantial majority of the businesses on Grand River to be able to fix it. It's just, the system was not designed with the proper shutoffs. And so it's something we need to do, and we need to do it sooner rather than later.
You didn't mention the cost of that program in the memo. Do you happen to know what that cost is?
The gate valve project is, this is Dan in my ear, I'm trying to remember. It is $425,000.
Thank you.
The other piece of water and sewer is we're proposing to recalibrate the way we do the ready to serve fee. We're in the minority in the way we do it. We're proposing to change it to the size of your meter so that non-residential people pay more of their fair share because they have a larger meter and it's harder to serve. And so that's the rationale behind that. Candidly, this is the only way I've ever seen it. It was unique coming here and us doing it differently. And then I just want to point out 2 things. They're coming next year that everyone should be aware of because they will be probably early in the year budget amendments to the positive. One, the opioid settlement funds, the National Opioid Settlement Funds have begun coming in, and we have previously brought forward small budget amendments to address smaller purchases by the chief to that meet the standards within that. We are looking into sort of the broader long-term use of these funds because they are restricted. But it is, I mean, we expect to get nearly $300,000 as a community. And so we're gonna look into and probably present something in the early part of next year, a plan for how to address that. The chief has some thoughts and his staff is looking into it at this point. The other piece that I will point out is that if we do have an open marijuana dispensary in 2025, we will get a marijuana payment from the state. Can't tell you how much that is. In previous years, between $50,000 and $60,000 is a solid average. But once we know that number, we will bring that forward to the board for discussion as well. Candidly, I will strongly recommend you just replace the police vehicles ad infinitum with these funds because it's an easy source of revenue to plow right back into the police. But we can have that conversation when we know what that's going to be, because right now I couldn't even give you an estimate of what that's going to be. So that's really where we stand right now. Happy to discuss this in any way, shape, or form. Again, from a scheduling perspective, the public hearing will be on the 3rd. You will get the budget on the 27th. It will be distributed to the board and to the public. And then we hope for adoption on the 17th of September.
Thank you. So this item is for discussion this evening. It looks like Treasurer Deschain's ready to kick off the discussion.
Thank you, Supervisor. Regarding the climate sustainability grants, are these the ones that the Environmental Commission awards?
Yes.
I think we gave them $20,000 this year.
So there's two pieces to that. They have the green grants and the climate sustainability. The green grants is proposed to happen again. What we're doing is right now putting pause on the climate sustainability until we see what happens this year with the funding.
Okay, that's a pass-through funding we've gotten for the climate grants, or does that come from the general fund as well?
Both of those are general fund expenditures.
And how much were the climate sustainability grants in the past?
I believe it was $30,000 last year, and I believe the green grants were $25,000 the year before.
Hearing from Granger tonight and their passion for environmental sustainability and being a good environmental partner, we've got other partners like Granger who are very dependent upon the township's good relationship with the township and our residents, that we might think of, if we have to eliminate these grants, to go to them and ask them for some corporate sponsorship of these grants.
I would love to also, once we get some word on where the recycling center grants are next year, to address them with a plan of attack for that, to apply for one of those grants again.
Deputy Manager Opsimer thinks that will come up before the Materials Management Committee, before the county is created, which I'm a member of, and we'll certainly be pushing it from that angle as well.
Thank you.
Regarding staffing, the staffing area that I'm concerned about is IT. We've got 3 IT people, and none of them seem to take any time off. At the same time, because there's such demand, at this conference last week, I heard an FBI presentation on cyber crime, and the numbers haven't leveled off. They are escalating in significant numbers, ransomware attacks in particular. And the FBI reports them all, people report them to them, but there are some proactive attempts to go after these bad actors, but there's so many of them, and they're popping up everywhere.
Absolutely.
They're a real threat to any large organizations, particularly public organizations, where we've got information that's valuable to them, not the least of which are financial assets, which we're careful to protect. Has there been any discussion of additional IT person?
Absolutely. It was probably the third to last cut was the IT, additional IT employee. It's definitely needed, I think, and it's something that we're gonna have to take a long look at next year. I think the issue, to be candid, is just the police and fire, again, well needed, but that is sucking up all the oxygen in the room this year.
I understand it. The other part about IT is that every department is very reliant upon IT.
Absolutely.
Police and fire, certainly more than ever, with their automated response and information systems. Lastly, regarding water and sewer, the end of '22, we did a comparison of our rates compared to other communities. Every taxpayer utility customer got this. And back then, we were 28% lower than Bath Township to our north. We were 49% lower than East Lansing to our west, even though they use the exact same water and sewer plant. We are 60% lower than Delhi Township to our south, 74% lower than Williamston, and 85% lower than Grand Ledge. So it's been a nice perk for our residents that we've offered exceptionally low water and sewer rates. But from what I'm hearing, internal discussions, we're doing that at a cost, which is that we're not making the investments in the infrastructure of our water and sewer lines, and we'll pay a price for that. That price for it gets bigger and bigger the more we defer that cost. So a 20% increase is a huge increase, but I think it fits within the current rate schedule of other communities, and as you point out, we're still below those. And it's in many cases deferred maintenance, deferred upgrades to the system that we just can't put off any longer. Thank you for your overview of the budget.
Other board members, Trustee Wilson.
Could we talk about the environmental engineer position? And you're talking about hiring an individual to replace our current environmental programs coordinator. But this individual would have a two-pronged job. Is that what you're speaking of? Can you explain that a little more?
This is something that has came up relatively late in the game, and so we are actually still fleshing this out between Mr. Harvey, Deputy Manager Opsmer, Director Wazinski, Director Titoff. Had an initial meeting, getting ready to have another one. Yes, functionally that's the idea, is that you would bring in someone who has an environmental background but is able to take on some more technical things as well from an engineering perspective. I was actually an environmental engineer major for a while, so I at least can vouch that it exists. What we need to do, though, is sort of dial that in, because obviously we're not looking to create a new position under the union contract, so it's technically going to be called a project engineer. Just for clarity's full transparency, it's going to be another project engineer, but it's going to be environmental focus, and that's what we are going to recruit as. And so we still need to flesh that out. That's how it goes. But that's rough contours. You're well on your way to figuring out what we're figuring out.
It seems to me to be two different skill sets, and that's why I'm asking.
It does require a specific type of person.
Yes.
And candidly, it might not work. I mean, we have raised some concerns internally as to whether or not this is something that is feasible in the long run. We're just kicking it around to try and figure out what to do with it, and it wasn't a huge impact to the budget, so the proposal, we thought it was prudent to put it in as a full-time position at this point. If the transition doesn't work, it doesn't work, and we go back to square one.
As a follow-up on that question, Leroy Harvey is very good at what he does.
He's one of a kind.
He's been here for a while.
Yep.
If this position were not to change, would you believe that it would be very difficult to hire someone into that position as it exists currently?
You know, I think we could probably get someone simply because I think we have two things going for us, right? Very close to a major university, which is going to attract a certain type of young, environmentally go-getter. And two, it's a unique position from a government perspective. There's not a lot of communities that do this, like explicitly do this. And so I think if we do end up falling back to the sort of current status, it's not a bad thing. I think we can still do it. You know, I think it's going to be a matter of finding the right fit at that point, because you know there's a lot of things that have been built, and so we want to make sure to honor that legacy going forward as well.
Yeah. So the reason I ask is, you know, we're essentially creating what I'm assuming is going to be about a half position in HR, and we're transitioning a partial position in this position to a full position. I wonder, you know, if we can achieve some of the the things that, we've been doing with this position as it currently is, would it be better spent bringing on someone full-time in HR as opposed to basically promoting this position to a full-time engineer role?
I can tell you that that's where we started with HR as a full-time position. It is a more expensive proposition to do that because the increment to change the current environmental position to a full-time is smaller than the increment to bring a part-time to full-time. Largely because of benefits, if we're being totally honest. But it's certainly something we can look into. I think that's the kind of feedback that we're hoping to get tonight, so we can go back and crunch one last time through the lines and see if we can find it.
Yeah, the only reason I mention it is because it seems as though, and I've only been at this a couple of years, but every year we talk about the backlog, the massive mountain of HR stuff that needs to get done. We'd want to see trainings on DEI, but we also want to see a new personnel handbook, which the Policy Review Committee is working on. But we've also got 163 job descriptions to go through and update that haven't been touched in 25 years. And so I wonder, is it worth bringing someone on full-time to assist Director Titoff with that, with the massive backlog of work to be done there? Trustee Trezise.
Well, as far as the job descriptions, I don't know that those need to be updated entirely. Usually what happens in an HR department is when they have a position that they're advertising for, they look at the job description for that and see if it's still valid at that time. I've never been to a place that went through all job descriptions at once and redid it, other than if they were changing to a different payroll system or evaluation system. So I don't know that that's an urgency, but I will tell you that Director Titoff has spent an awful lot of time with Deb and I on this policy manual, and she does need some backup because right now, if her administrative assistant is gone, the director of HR is doing payroll for 163 people. And because the way our system is set up with a 2-week lag, but we pay them on time, it creates a lot of hands-on work for each payroll.
Yeah.
So she does have the need. That's based on my experience anyway.
Yes. I can't. I sent an email to my staff, my leadership staff last week as I was trying to get out of town, telling them, it's the end of the summer, it's the beginning of the school year. I know you got kids. I know you're trying to get that last trip in. Just do it. You all need a mental health break. You all deserve it. I worry about all of them, but that's who I am. And I would give them all another body or two because everyone could use it.
Yeah.
She is high on the list. Deputy Manager Opsmer is high on the list. IT Manager Giebus is high on the list. Yeah, we will take another crack at it and see if we can get it in there. I'll be candid. I think part of it's going to rely on our next discussion as well, but we'll take another run at it.
Okay. Trustee Wilson.
I am concerned that there is an awful lot of pressure being put on the Department of Public Works. They clearly are understaffed, so I'm going to put in a plug for looking at a creative way that we could absorb Leroy's position and meld that into something that might be full-time and give some relief valve to our Department of Public Works. I'd like to comment on something else. I was at a neighborhood police meeting last month, and I talked to several officers and the chief about tasers and how the cost of tasers from ownership, which was their prior platform, and this is a one vendor outfit. Nobody else makes these tasers that they need in their jobs. And going to a subscription basis is going to increase the cost many-fold. Have we looked at how serious that's going to impact our, seriously impact our budget?
It's $33,000 on an annual basis.
That's what I heard.
Now, it gets us, to their credit, it gets us what we need regularly instead of us budgeting to like piece them out. Plus, and correct me if I'm wrong, Chief, it gets an individual officer an individual taser, which is not currently the case. Because of how we've structured it over the years, it's sort of a check-in, check-out type system. You'll be responsible for your equipment at that point, which is a good thing from the perspective of the officers. It's just, yeah, going to the subscription model is a little tough.
Yep, that's what I understand. Could you talk a little bit more about the increase the size of Prime Meridian magazine under
Yeah, this is,
communications? What is that?
Communications department has proposed to add, I believe, boy, one of the easiest notes, and I can't find it. It is, I believe it's 8 pages additional to the magazine to move it from 16 to 24. And I know you're watching, Sam. Feel free to text me if I'm incorrect. Just to be able to provide a more robust service at a relatively modest increase to the budget.
Okay.
We're estimating a $6K increase.
Okay.
You did mention, I agree with the second lieutenant position in the police department to spread not only those responsibilities at that high level, but also to give a path to advancement. You did mention the fire inspector. Did you put a fire inspector into the budget?
That is not in the budget at this point.
Okay.
That was the last cut.
And could we go into 2026 before we do that,
Yes?
realistically?
Yeah, no, I mean, we're going to continue to function as we function.
Okay.
I think what I'm going to tell you in my budget message this year is there are needs.
Yeah.
And I'm just trying to be transparent about them as we move forward because, my background, for those of you that don't know, I worked in Novi for several years, which during the height of the housing bubble, we were doing great. And then I went to East Lansing and Howell, 2 communities that were much different financially. And so year over year changes were minimal at best. And so what I'm trying to do is what I saw my managers do at the time is sort of lay out, and what I will do is lay out the things that we need to start looking at going forward so they don't get lost to the sands of time, right?
Yeah.
If IT Director Gibbies retires tomorrow, I still know when I'm doing the 2026 budget, I need another IT person, no matter what. So that's part of what my message is going to be is here's sort of our long-term look at this.
Well, we certainly appreciate all the work that you put into this, and we knew that 2025 was going to be a very tight budget year. So thank you, and thanks to all of our staff for assisting us with seeing the big picture.
Yeah, I cannot appreciate the M-Team's patience enough. And Carol, thank you, Carol. She answered a lot of silly questions. They're silly to me. She was like, oh, then no question silly. Okay, thank you. Thank you, make me feel better.
Great, thank you.
Other members, Treasurer DeShane.
I'd like to reinforce what Trustee Wilson said about giving Public Works some relief. And I like the idea of converting this environmental position to an environmental engineer position. And if we can do that without a huge expense, I think it's worthwhile. The thing about Leroy's position, he's done such a good job. He's elevated the community awareness of environmental issues. So the need for it certainly isn't as great as it was when we first brought him on. And perhaps we can use our communication staff to take other feeds of information to provide that information. We have a very active and skilled environmental commission, and they, I'm sure, would be glad to provide content. So that void that would be created when he left could be filled with other means. And we know that there's some real, the Public Works has got some real needs, and particularly because they've lost Niall and is it John Heckman before that? So they've had 2 major losses in the past couple of years, and we've got new staff coming on, but they aren't not operating for years at the level that those experienced employees were. So we want to make sure we're not leaving them short-staffed.
Yeah, and that's really part of the thought behind that. I will point out also the one personnel thing I forgot, it's because it's buried in the sewer fund, is one additional utility worker there to get them back to funding for personnel levels from a few years ago. That's sort of the first of probably many utility workers we need over there, but we chose not to make any changes on the water side this year until we sort that out.
Thank you.
Other board members? I did want to mention, chime in on the water issue as well. Certainly, we are dealing with the sins of our forebears and needing to address the water rates and the sewer rates here in the township. I would ask that we look at all creative means possible to make sure that we are right-sizing the way various meter sizes, meter uses, what have you, are being charged, so that we are making sure that everyone is paying their fair share. Obviously, we've also heard a lot about the need to address our utility billing position that needs to be filled and running at optimal capacity, so that we can, at least bring in the revenue that we are expecting to bring in through our utility billing. And certainly that's something that we've had on our radar for a while. I also, agree with Treasurer DeShane's comment that, our rates remain well below other rates in the area. Grand Ledge is almost 90% higher than where we are. It's our residents have enjoyed a very low rate for a very long time. And that's not to say that, we're looking to raise them on par with Grand Ledge. That's not what we're talking about here. It's not a small increase, but it's also not what it could be. And so I also wonder if we can look at, from a policy perspective, so that we don't hamper future boards and with this, that we look at perhaps a systemic change to how we address our rates, perhaps pegging it to inflation, or the way our property taxes go up, peg it in the same way, so that we can see year over year those things, they increase commensurate with inflation, so that we're not having to come back at this in crisis mode year after year. Taking a more creative approach to how we handle this, I think. And so I would love it if, we can get over the initial hump of the bigger increase that we have to do here, and then look at a more systemic solution to the problem for the long term.
We are committed to that. I will have an update to the board on the UB situation later this week. And we are committed to trying to figure out the rate increase situation. I will say, another thing that I'm, my former boss, Shay Charles, in the back of my head right now, when we were in Howell, we had a rate study every so many years, and it laid it out. Here's what you need to do to get to a sustainable system. And it was, and you're not going to love it, but it's pretty cut and dry in many cases. It's a math problem. But we agree. There's got to be some creative solutions out here to not have to hit the accelerator every year as hard as we have to hit it.
Perhaps if we can find a way to do that in as cheap a fashion as possible, try not to cut our nose off to spite our face. We might look at that sometime in the winter or spring before we get to our next budget cycle.
I think we can probably do it for a reasonable amount, as I recall.
Sure. The other thing, not for this budget, but sometime down the line, I do want to take a look at FTEs that are assigned to these special funds to make sure that we are addressing those appropriately, and that the allocation of our salaries and benefits are coming from the appropriate place.
You are stealing the thunder of my budget letter, but that is definitely, that will be on our list for 2025, is to evaluate all of the allocations across all the funds. I don't think to be clear, nothing untoward is happening.
Yeah.
I just think it's a good practice to do it every few years and make sure that the people that we hired into these positions to do the work under this fund are actually doing, or has their position changed over the years to be in a different fund?
Yeah.
So point well taken, and you should expect that.
Thank you. Well, we provided you with a lot of comments and discussion. Hopefully this will help to get us to an efficient September 3rd.
We will take all this into account, try to finalize the line item here tomorrow, and start working on everything else associated with it.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next on our agenda is item 13C, ARPA reallocations. Mr. Schmidt.
So this is the last piece of, I believe the last piece of the ARPA discussion. We've provided you with a current breakdown of the unencumbered balance for each of the proposed projects that were previously approved. I will point out that the 93,000 that shows up at the 25 local road program is technically unencumbered because we're not in the 25 road program yet, but you guys have already made that set aside, so you don't need to worry about that. Functionally, what we're looking at is approximately $290,000 unencumbered if we assume that we are leaving the 129 for the senior and community center as we move forward, which at this point would recommend, and we can address that very easily as part of a final sort of reallocation of this. So that leaves us with 290. Functionally, staff has come up with 3 options at this point. One, you would take, you pay the striker contract out of the ARPA funds for 1 more year. Take a little pressure off the general fund until 2026, where it'll be easier to absorb because there's not the remainder of the police and fire funds coming in that year. They'll already be baked in. And then allocate the remainder to the road program. You can allocate the entirety of the remainder to the road program or some other priority that the board has not yet discussed. And so happy to talk this through. What I would add is sort of the step 3 to all this is that the board make clear one way or another if we are keeping the senior and community center allocation where it is, that if we don't encumber it by June of next year, it rolls into the 25 local road program. And just to have it clear on the record, this is what we're doing. And in fact, I would probably just ask you that if anything is unencumbered by June of next year, it just rolls into the road program. So we don't have to have this conversation again.
Okay, this item is up for discussion. I'll go ahead and kick us off this time. I appreciate you bringing this to us. Obviously, this is a timely discussion. Couple of thoughts I had. Since we have used this money by and large to fund sort of tangible investments that in the community. One thing that stuck out to me, and I like the symmetry of numbers that line up, was that the service center generator, which is currently allocated to the CPF, does come in at a cost of about $300,000. We have about 290 here. I wonder, since we've already baked the striker contract into the fund budget for 2025, if we might relieve some pressure off the CPF, keep that fund balance continuing to grow over time, and fund the service center generator instead. Alternatively, the 2 other items in there that I thought were of interest that we could use this to pay for would be the police equipment or the police office furniture that was listed in the previous memo that you described. And then whatever remaining balance could go toward, other. I don't particularly love the idea of putting it toward roads. And the reason why is that it doesn't get us a whole lot, right? We could allocate this whole $300,000 and that might get us 150 feet of road. And so to me, the impact of, we're getting the new generator for the service center, that's, the full amount, right? That's the whole kit and caboodle we pay for it. And it has benefits to a lot of folks. So I understand why we allocated so much of it. And, once you get to a certain threshold, the 2 million that we put toward the roads certainly gave us a whole lot of value, but at this rate, the amount that we're talking about is minuscule in the grand scheme of the road budget, the road fund. And so my inclination would be to fund something that's a little bit smaller, but something that we can do fully. And we can say, that was, slap a sticker on it, funded with your ARPA funds. So that's my thought on that. Other board members. Treasurer DeShane.
Thank you. Appreciate you bringing these numbers to us. I kind of like the idea of putting it to the roads because this is the ARPA dollars putting right back into the community and doing something internally like furniture or even the IT generator that benefits the township. It ultimately benefits our residents as well, but it's not as visible to our residents as roads. And you're right, if we did it $300,000 to the roads at $2 million a road, that's about 1.2, or about 13% of a mile, which is what, 500, 600 feet of road. But if that's your 500, 600 feet of road that gets done because of it, it means a whole lot to you. Roads are really expensive, and that's part of our challenge is that we're not going to meet our initial goals for the road program. We proposed this to the public in 2019, and they passed that 1.9 mil increase because asphalt prices have gone up from $60 a ton to $100 a ton, and that they're not coming back down. So we're only going to get to maybe 70% of our goal, somewhere between 60 and 70. And by putting this additional money to it, we're showing good faith to our residents. We said we're going to touch all 155 miles of roads, and we'll touch more of them than we would have otherwise if we put this additional money to it. It's been very popular. All of us, most of the table here, were knocking on doors for the past 4 months, and I got a lot of good comments on the roads, and our roads are looking better. It's something very tangible that our residents see, and again, it's something we're doing that other communities aren't doing that we should be proud of. So I like the idea of rolling the additional money into roads. It's tangible, it's beneficial, and it helps us keep faith with the road millage that the voters passed in 2019. Those are my thoughts.
Thank you. Other board members? Well, I guess since I sat on the other side of that issue, I'll simply say that we have a funding source for it. That's better or worse. We have a way that we're paying for it. And, some of these larger items, I fear that, we're dipping into our capital projects fund for. I think it's a worthwhile endeavor, but I understand where you're coming from on that.
Thank you.
Trustee Trezise.
I understand both of your comments, and I'm wondering if we put the money into the capital projects fund to cover the generator, that might free up some funds that are available if we can't fully grant fund the addition on the firehouse. As Director Schmidt said, the price on that seems to be high. And to the extent that we can take some other items out of the capital projects fund, especially in an amount of close to $300,000, it gives us a better chance of getting it fully funded because the dorm addition is necessary.
Trustee Wilson.
Director Schmidt said that he'd like to pursue grants for that purpose.
I understand that. I'm just saying if we can't get it fully grant funded, if we have funds in the capital projects fund, we may be able to cover the shortfall.
Other thoughts? Further discussion? Okay. Well,
We'll do our homework.
we have some murky thoughts, it sounds like.
We'll give you a couple options, and see which one, we'll bring forward a couple options during the public hearing and see which one makes the most sense. At least we have a good sense of where the board is at least headed from an options perspective, so we can finalize building the budget based off that, and then the reallocation of the ARPA funds can be sort of separated from that discussion Understood.
Thank you very much. Next on our agenda is item 13D, USBGN proposal to change the name of Lake Lansing to Pine Lake.
So, fun fact about me, I'm a geography major. And I know a lot of federal agencies. I did not know that the U.S. Bureau of Geographic Names, U.S. Board on Geographic Names existed. So, fun fact I've learned in the process here. I did not know that existed. So there is a change.org petition that is circulating to change the name of Lake Lansing to Pine Lake. And
There's a petition?
it's an online petition that has been circulated. So they have reached out to the local municipality for input. At this point, I can tell you that the Lake Lansing advisory committee unanimously voted no on this. And we are also reaching out to the Lake Lansing Property Owners Association to get their feedback as well. Our understanding is Ingham County will be opposed formally because of the cost to change everything. So we're just bringing this forward because it's a unique little thing that's popped up recently. And ask whether or not the board wants to take some other process to solicit public input here, or if after we hear from the Lake Lansing Property Owners Association formally, that we can bring it back and the board would like to make a recommendation one way or another. There is no formal timeline on this, but yeah, that's where we're at. This is an interesting one.
Board members, trustee Sunland.
I think there are a lot of pine lakes out there, aren't there? I mean,
There are a few, it turns out.
Tons of pine lakes, and I think Lake Lansing is kind of unique. I would like to keep it that way.
Okay. Trustee Wilson.
I'd like to hear from the stakeholders. I want to hear from the property owners and whoever else has property on that lake. So let's gather what we can from them because they're the ones most affected by this. And when I read this, I was dumbfounded that one individual could go to this federal bureau and petition to have the name of a lake changed. That's just amazing to me. And as long as there's no formal deadline, I can't imagine there's no deadline because they did want to hear from stakeholders, including the government and the region. But you didn't see any deadline on it?
They did not, as I recall, and I read it a couple times because I actually thought it was one of Director Geeby's phishing scams. But it was not. And so they did not provide us with a deadline at this point. We would like to get back to them relatively shortly. So
yes,
we will we'll follow up with the Lake Lansing Property Owners Association, which would be the other main org, and we will get that feedback back in front of the board as soon as possible.
Great.
Yeah, I agree. Maybe if they'd like to send a representative to the meeting, we have this on the agenda, we could arrange that. I mean, I think that we did hear, we have a Lake Lansing Advisory Committee, and they have advised us that they oppose this. I do think the Property Owners Association does cast a slightly wider net in that regard.
Yeah.
And so we certainly want to hear from them as well. Any feedback that they get, but yeah, let's see if we can't arrange a time to meet and get this sorted out. All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Last on the agenda, well, before public comment, I should say, is item 13E, the manager review process. I had hoped to work with Director Tiethoff on this, but I will present it to you this evening. So one of the things that we discussed over in the early summer, amongst the things that we would like to see updated for the coming years, is how we conduct our review of our township manager annually. With the thought being that we have a more transparent review process and that we begin to include feedback directly from our staff, who do work with the manager on an operational level, day to day. And so what I've presented in the packet here is an overview process that we might consider as we look at how we reshape this. My hope is that we get some feedback on it this evening, so I can take it back with Director Titoff and make some amendments and changes if there are any. But essentially, the process would include Director Titoff and I working together to anonymously select a number of township staff members who would add their thoughts and opinions on the township manager's performance. This process would begin in September, giving them some time to collate their thoughts and present them to the board anonymously, filtered through, collected by the HR director and distributed to the board. Then in October, the board would begin their process of evaluating several forms yet to be completed for the purposes of this. I'm looking to perhaps make some updates to the manager review forms that we've been using over the last couple of years because they haven't been updated lately. And then previously, the township supervisor has received all of the information from the board and from the board and presented a summary wherein my role would basically collate and in my own words present to the board a final review of the township manager for the board's approval. I think it's valuable for everyone to have their voice heard. And so rather than do that, my suggestion would be the board will submit their reviews and the person in my seat would write an executive summary offering a succinct version of that, but then presenting the full materials for the review. And I would hope to have this all concluded by our second meeting in November, thus giving ourselves an actual deadline for it. So with that, I'll sort of turn it over if there's any questions or thoughts on this process as it's been laid out. As I say, we do have a couple of outstanding items to put together the actual review forms, and Director Titoff is working with her counterparts in our surrounding neighbors and resources within the Michigan Municipal League and the Townships Association to gather other review forms that they use so that we can use those to update our forms. Any discussion or thoughts on this? Trustee Trezise.
It looks like a decent process. I had a question because it wasn't clear to me. Are all the reviews or all the evaluations from the employees going to be provided to all of the board members?
Yes.
That's what I thought I read. You were going to collate them and pass them out.
Yes.
And the same with the individual evaluations from the trustees and board members, which be shared with all the others.
Yes, yes. Mm-hmm. Okay. Those would be included in the packet when we approve the review at the end of the process. Trustee Wilson.
I like this approach better than the approach we've taken in the past. This is more of a 360 look at those that supervise the manager as we do, but also those who are supervised by the manager. And it makes sense to create this every year. There would not be the same people serving year after year because there would be different selections of individuals. I just think it's a great idea and I think we should try it out.
I will point out, included in this, in addition to the staff, our board and commission members, because they do have interaction with the township manager on occasion, and it would exclude anyone that has reviewed that has been a part of this process in the previous 4 years. So there would be rotations so that the same employees don't get selected each year.
Good.
I think the 4-year limitation may be too long for some of the areas.
Could be.
Especially when you're talking about police officers, firefighters, 2 from each, and a supervisory position, it may be difficult to actually randomize after 2 or 3 years.
Yeah, well, the good news is that we would never know as board members, nor would the manager know. That's part of the virtue of this.
I understand that. That's fine, but I guess putting that limitation on, we could strive for that to see if it's even possible.
Okay. We can certainly make that a little more, something we hope for and not something we require. Other board members, Trustee McCurtis.
I am not familiar with how it was done previously because I wasn't on the board, but I am familiar with having input from those who are supervised, just because of the previous positions I've had before it was done this way. So I am familiar with this, and so seeing it this way is comfortable for me, just because there's some familiarity with it. Just wanted to say that.
Thank you. Treasurer DeShane.
I like the process as well. We haven't been as systematic about it. We haven't held ourselves to the schedule of it. And so I do like that. I think it's a good process. I do want to make sure we differentiate between getting data back from employees compared to evaluating them. We have to evaluate the manager.
Understand that.
Yeah. We need feedback from our employees. Is the manager fair and honest? Is the manager open to your ideas? Is the manager, a series of questions we ask employees so we know how he's interacting with the employees. But they wouldn't be evaluating him. We're going to evaluate him based on the data we get back from them. So there'd be 2 different, very different. We would do an evaluation individually. Employees would give us feedback as to their interaction with the manager. Is it a good working environment? What has he done to contribute to that or be detrimental to that? So those are good data points we haven't gathered from the staff in the past. And as we all know, if we had that, would have benefited this board. So I thank you for your work on this, Supervisor. I think it's a good process and it's worth trying.
Thank you. And I'll make that distinction. I was trying to find the right way to say feedback versus evaluation.
Yeah.
That's a succinct way of putting it. Okay. Any other discussion? All right, I will continue to work with Director Tiethoff on seeing if we can find a way to get this implemented relatively soon and hopefully have something back to us at our next meeting. Next up on our agenda is item 14, comments from the public. I do have one green card from Roger Taylor. Mr. Taylor, would you like to approach the podium, please? And we will put 3 minutes on our system here. And if you could give us your name and address for the record, please.
Hello, good evening. Roger Taylor here. Glad to be here, listening to all this good information. I understand overall the township manager plays a crucial role in ensuring effective and efficient functioning of local government and serving the needs of the community. With that being said, I don't know if there was a time constraint for applying for this job, but I like to throw my name in the hat. So, that being said, that if you can take my name into consideration, I appreciate it. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
I will just point out, the action this evening was to select a search firm for township manager. I assume that the application window will be sometime in September or October.
Okay.
Okay. Any other members of the public wishing to speak this evening? I don't have any other green cards. Seeing none, time for public comment is closed at 8:29 p.m. Next on our agenda is item 15, other matters and board member comments. Any discussion, board members? With good cause. All right. Next up on our agenda is item 16, adjournment. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Moved by Trustee Wilson, supported by Trustee Sunland. All those in favor of adjournment say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And the board stands adjourned at 8:30 p.m.